Hey everyone, and welcome back. My name is Mackenzie, aka Astramac, and I'm a professional astrologer, and I'm here to talk all things astrology with you. Today, I want to talk all things rising signs. What are they and what does it mean? I feel like in these times that we're living in, pretty much everybody knows their sun, moon, and rising sign now, and I'm seeing it in people's Instagram bios and TikTok bios, and so it's just kind of slowly become this common knowledge. And so today I wanted to talk about what is a rising sign. So your rising sign is also known as your ascendant sign, and if you're looking at the wheel on your chart, that is your chart, you might see it labeled as the AC, and it's that furthest left part on your chart marking the eastern horizon. So if you were to walk outside right now and you're facing south and you look to the east, on that eastern horizon, there's currently a sign that is rising up over that horizon. And so when you were born, there was also a sign rising up over that eastern horizon. And that sign is your rising sign. And your rising sign or your ascendant marks the very beginning of your first house. And it really represents your entry into the world, basically. So you can only really know your rising sign if you know the exact time that you were born and the exact place that you were born. Because the sign on that eastern horizon changes about every 2.5 hours depending on where you are in the world. But that's why we as astrologers can be such sticklers sometimes for an accurate birth time, because even if the time you provide is off by 15 minutes, it can even change the layout of your chart, and it can even change your rising sign. And so that's why it's so important. Keep in mind, a birth chart or any astrology chart is a circle or a wheel. So even though the ascendant marks the beginning of the first house, it's the house that comes after the 12th house. And one of the many things the 12th house represents is that time before you were born. It was your time in the womb. And when you think about it, you really didn't have your own sense of identity at that time. You were totally dependent on your mother and the nutrients she was taking in, and you weren't your own individual person yet. Now there's a lot more that the 12th house represents, but for the sake of this topic and this conversation, we'll leave it at that. So as we move from that 12th house into the first house, your ascendant marks the exact time that you were born and your spirit entered the physical plane and you took your first breath and you became your own individual person. And many astrologers call this first house the house of identity or the house of self. And, what does identity even mean? It's really who you are as an individual. And it's kind of those unique set of characteristics and qualities that can be used to describe you as a person. So your ascendant really kind of represents how you entered the world, and it's how you enter new situations. And I think it was Rick Levine who said that it's kind of it's how you dawn on people. So it tends to be people's first impressions of you, and whether that is an accurate portrayal of you as a person kind of depends on the rest of your chart and the ruler of your ascendant, or if you have any aspects to your ascendant or any other planets in that first house. But more often than not, we don't get to choose how people perceive us, and we don't get to choose our first impression on people. So you may or you may not resonate with those qualities of your rising sign, although in my own practice I found that a lot of people do tend to resonate, because they're those qualities that have been put on us from a very young age, and they're those qualities that were deemed acceptable to our surroundings. And so over time we do tend to kind of adapt and take on those qualities, sometimes even on a subconscious level, and we do start to identify with those qualities more. And it's not we have to actively try to show up with these qualities of our ascendant sign. It's just something that we do without thinking about, and it's it's just how we show up. It's not I choose to have brown eyes. It's just kind of something that I have, and it's what I show up with. So you can think of it as how others perceive you, but it's also how you perceive the world and the reality, and it's also your sense of identity in a way. And it's very different than your sun sign. Your sun sign is your conscious sense of self, and it's that animating force that just emanates from within, and it's that spirit that just animates your physical body. And so depending on what sign or what house your sun sits in, depends on if that comes through when you meet people for the first time, for example. For me, my sun is exactly trine my ascendant, and so when I first meet people, depending on the situation and the person, my sun does tend to shine through somewhat, although I do have Saturn also score my ascendant, so that limits it in some way. But whether we have accepted these qualities of our rising sign or not, they're just kind of these qualities that we've learned to identify with over the course of our life. And so again, it's like our first impressions, and it's not like the core of who you are as a person, but it's just kind of like those qualities that you show up with and those qualities that you lead with, and how you meet new people and how you meet new situations and how you enter new situations. And so that's why the ascendant is associated with like our physical body or our physical appearance. Like it's our outermost shell, it's like the surface of us. And so that includes what we look like. And when you think about it, like a lot of that first impression is made off of those like snap judgments on our appearance. And so, depending on what your rising sign is and like where the ruler of your rising sign is and any other planets in that first house, you will take on those qualities of your rising sign and what you look like. And I actually did like a TikTok series a couple years ago where I went through all of the rising signs and what you look like based on your rising sign. And I put that on YouTube, so I'll link that down below. And so with our rising sign, I kind of view it as like those Matryoshka dolls or like those Russian dolls. And our ascendant is like that outermost doll. It's that surface of ourselves, basically. And so you could think of it as like, the outside of a house or like the outside of a castle or the outside of a car, like what does that car look like? That's the rising sign. And so to stress again, our rising sign is not like who we are at our core, and it's not like our true identity. Unless you have like your sun or some other planet in that first house in that same sign, then you might identify with those qualities even more. But like general rule of thumb, like your rising sign is, again, it's your first impression and it's how you enter new situations. And so it might be how like an acquaintance or like someone that you're meeting for the first time would describe you, but it's not going to be how like your really close friends or your family would describe you. It's kind of like a general idea of who you are from a distance. And so it's far from your personality. And again, it's far from the core of who you are as a person. I think when I first started studying astrology, like I kind of learned it as like your rising sign is your mask that you put on for the outside world. But, I don't see it like that anymore because, a mask is something that you consciously put on. And there's nothing conscious about our rising sign. It's point blank just like how we show up. And, we have no control over how we are being perceived by others. Again, it's just like that outermost shell of a person. And so the rising sign is also how you interact with the world around you. We use our outermost shell, and so the qualities that describe your rising sign describe how you interact with the world around you. Like an Aries rising might just like jump right in and like charge forward head first, boldly and quickly into like these new situations and in their interactions with the outside world. Or if you're a Cancer rising, you might be like super sensitive to external stimuli. Or if you're a Scorpio rising, you might want to like control how you interact with the outside world. And so you might approach new situations in a more like reserved or self-protective state. You can also think of your rising sign as like your external social personality, like how you are entering a party or like, again, how you are in meeting new people. It's just like how we greet the world and how we approach life. If you want to think about it like another way, or like a good analogy is like, think about your chart as like a house, and your ascendant or like your rising sign is the front door. And so when people meet you, they're meeting that front door. And so it's kind of like how you ask people to approach you. And it's also like this barrier to entry, that people have to move through in order to get to your more inner world and get to like your more inner self. Like, do you have like a do not knock or like do not disturb or no solicitor sign at your front door? Or do you have like a welcome mat and like a glass door where people can see like right into your house? Or do you have like multiple front doors that people have to move through, and then like once they get through those first two, then like that last door has like 5 different kinds of locks on it, where people have to find the right key and like the secret passcode. And then like when people show up, are you like friendly and inviting, or are you kind of like standoffish? Like, do you answer the door when people knock, or do you kind of like, hide away? Another way you could think about it is like, imagine that your chart is like this big castle with a drawbridge. Think about the castle's appearance, and that's going to have an immediate impression on people. Is it imposing, or is it more like serious and guarded, or is it more inviting and playful? Like, what kind of architecture does it have? Like, is it more traditional, or is it more modern? And also, what does that drawbridge look like? Is that bridge like closed and not letting people in? Or maybe it moves down like really, 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 really slowly, or maybe it moves down more quickly and more flowy. And with this bridge or your rising sign, this is where you let people in. And if you're a Scorpio rising, you really like to be in control of that drawbridge. And so people might have to kind of like prove themselves to you, like prove they're worthy and prove their trust. Like, can you trust them enough to let them in? And again, we don't get to consciously choose what our castle looks like, and so we don't consciously choose what we look like, and it's just like this first impression that you leave on people, your physical impression that you make. But it's also that piece of you that's like your connection between you and the rest of the world, and that's that bridge. And that's a really important piece of the Ascendant is like, yes, it's you physically, but it's also your connection with the outside world and how you engage with the outside world. Another analogy that might work for you is like, think about your first house as being like a car, and what the car looks like is your rising sign, and it describes what the car looks like, but then like the person driving the car, that's going to be the ruler of your ascendant, like what planet rules that sign, and any passengers in the car could be like planets that are in that first house. And again, the style of the car depends on like what your rising sign is. Like, is it big or loud, or does it take up a lot of space on the road, or is it like small and compact and built for efficiency? But yes, you get the point. Like I said earlier, the ascendant is also our own unique perspective. And if you've ever gotten a reading with me, which, by the way, if you're interested in getting a reading with me, you can go to the link down below and book with me. I love doing natal chart readings, and I do spend a lot of time on the first house just because, it's an important house, and I could honestly do like a 2-hour reading on just like the ascendant alone. But again, so if you've gotten a reading with me, then you know that I describe the first house as like this lens through how we see the world, and it's also this lens through how the world sees us, and that lens is colored by the sign on the first house cusp, aka your rising sign. Like, depending on a lot of different things going on in the chart, but if you're a Pisces rising, you might have like this rose-tinted glasses lens, because it is like this sensitivity that really comes through with a Pisces rising, and that lens kind of helps them deal with reality a little bit easier. Or if you're like a Capricorn rising, then you might view the world through this more like realistic lens. Or you might have like a Virgo rising, where it's kind of like this like super zoomed in lens that you kind of view the world through like those minute details, and sometimes a more analytical lens. So again, that lens really colors our own unique perspective on things. And I can't remember where I heard this, but your rising sign, like, it's like that perspective that you choose. Like if you were to sit in a theater, and like maybe it's like a super round theater, and that seat that you choose is like your vantage point to the stage, and that stage is the stage of life. Like hundreds of people can sit around that same stage, and they're all viewing the same stage, but they have their own vantage point, and they're seeing a different angle, and they're seeing a different side of the stage and what's going on. And so each person might have a different, vantage point or different perspective on what's going on the stage, and yet what's going on the stage remains the same. It's just that people might describe what's going on in different ways depending on what's going on from their point of view. So we all see life in different ways and from different perspectives, depending on where we're sitting and depending on what our rising sign is and where that ruler is and all this other stuff. So it's our outlook on life, and it's our own unique perspective, and it's kind of like everything gets filtered through that lens that's on that first house cusp, aka our rising sign. Like for me, being a Gemini rising, I have like this lens or this filter of like curiosity and seeing the world through like this childlike sense of curiosity. And so I like to ask a lot of questions, and I like to read a lot in order to satiate that sense of curiosity. And actually, I'll just like quickly go through the elements. I won't go through like every individual sign. Maybe that'll be a video for another day. So starting off with like fire signs, these are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. These people lead with passion and confidence, and they're more willing to like jump into action. There's just like this sense of enthusiasm and zest that these people show up with, and how people perceive them as well. And then we've got the Earth risings, which are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. These people enter at a more like grounded and slow pace, kind of sensing things out. They tend to be more measured, and they move through life more deliberately. They also tend to be like more tactile as well. And they just have like a very like grounded vibe, which I appreciate as an air heavy person. And then we've got the air risings, which are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And these people tend to lead through like connection and thought and dialogue. And they tend to be more interactive and attuned to their environment and surroundings. And so they can be pretty observant, and they also tend to pick up on patterns pretty fast. But again, they lead with like communication and also like this, they need this like mental connection. And then we've got the water risings, which are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And these people tend to lead more emotionally or sensitively. And like, I feel like every rising sign has the capacity to get overstimulated, but with these water risings, it's like they're more absorbent and permeable. And so these are the people when they enter new situations, it's kind of going to be like, you know, I'm feeling everything and it's too much, especially Pisces. And so maybe one of these days I'll go through all of the rising signs, but that is quite the undertaking, and I've already gone pretty long. Now, if you don't identify with some of those qualities of your rising sign for whatever reason, that's okay. You probably just have some other things going on in your chart. Like, do you have any planets in your first house, especially if it's like closely conjunct your ascendant? Or, you know, what's the ruler of your first house? And where is that ruler sitting? And in what sign? And are there any aspects being made to your ascendant or any aspects being made to the ruler of your ascendant? Like, what degree is your ascendant at? And what decan is that? You know, there's a lot that goes into interpreting just like that first house. And so there's a lot that goes into interpreting like literally your very first entry into the world and your entry into your birth chart. So the rising sign, it's a very important part of the chart. And so there's, again, a lot that goes into it, which is why that birth time is so important. And so to try and summarize a very long video, your rising sign, it's how you entered the world. And so it's how you enter new situations. And it's also your first impression on people. And it's how you dawn on people. And it's also your lens through how you view and perceive the world, and also how the world perceives you. And if you're anything like me, it's kind of like those analogies that help me remember things and make those mental connections. So if you can remember like the house analogy where the rising sign or your ascendant is that front door, or the car analogy where the rising sign is like what the car looks like, or the castle analogy, like what does the castle look like, and that drawbridge, like how you connect with the outside world. So it's like how you let people in or how you don't let people in, or how quickly you let people kind of into your inner world or how slowly. And then it's also like that Russian doll where it's kind of like that outermost shell of you, that first layer of you. If you've made it this far, be sure to comment down below what your rising sign is, and let me know if you resonate with those qualities of your rising sign, or if you've got any planets in there that you think kind of shape how it shows up for you. And again, I am offering birth chart readings as well as transit readings and solar return readings and mini readings, so if you're interested, be sure to book with me at the link that's down below. And yeah, I think that's all I've got for now. This was a really long one. So thanks for sticking with me this long, and until next time, love you, bye!